On January 16, the United Packing House Workers of America and the Amalgamated Meat Cutters called a strike against the six largest meat suppliers in the United States, with 268,000 workers going out on strike. The strike was called off after 10 days when the U.S. government seized the plants. On January 18, Eastern Airlines Flight 16B, on the last leg of a flight from Miami to Boston, crashed in Cheshire, Connecticut, killing all 14 passengers and the crew of 3. Mexico's ruling political party, the Partido de la Revolución Mexicana, was renamed the Partido Revolucionario Institucional, at the direction of President. The party would continue to hold the presidency and the legislative majority until 2000. On January 19, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, more commonly known as the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal, was created by proclamation of General Douglas MacArthur. By 1948, the Special Tribunal would obtain 25 convictions, 7 of them death sentences, for Japanese war criminals, including former Prime Minister Hideki Tojo. The Liberal Party of the Philippines was founded. The United Nations Security Council took up its very first order of business, a formal protest by Iran against the Soviet Union for the Soviet occupation of Iran's Azerbaijani section. On January 20, Charles de Gaulle resigned as chairman of the Provisional Government of the French Republic. On January 21, strike wave of 1945–1946. The United Steel Workers of America began a nationwide walkout, as 750,000 steelworkers ceased work at the nation's steel mills. It was the largest strike in American history, and began after U.S. Steel had rejected proposals made at a Thursday White House meeting. On January 22, an independent Kurdish nation, the Republic of Mahabad, was proclaimed in northern Iran by Qazi Muhammad, who was the new state's first president. The republic lasted until December, after Soviet troops withdrew from Iran and the Iranian army reoccupied the area. By U.S. presidential directive, Harry S. Truman created the post of Director of Central Intelligence and established the Central Intelligence Group, predecessor to the CIA. In an odd ceremony 2 days later, Truman presented the new director, Rear Admiral Sidney Sowers, with a black hat, a black cloak, and a wooden dagger. On January 23, the crew of the cargo ship USS Brevard rescued 4,296 Japanese civilians from the ship Enoshima Maru as it sank near Shanghai. The act is listed by Guinness for most people rescued at sea, civilians. Harry Dexter White was nominated by U.S. President Truman to be the American representative to the International Monetary Fund, despite a warning from the FBI that White had passed secret information to the Soviet Union. White was confirmed by the Senate on February 6 and would serve until 1947. On January 24, United Nations Resolution 1, the very first resolution of the UN General Assembly, created the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission. Baron Kijiro Shidehara, the Prime Minister of Japan, suggested to American Administrator Douglas MacArthur that, in return for keeping the Emperor as ceremonial head of state, the new Constitution of Japan would include what would become, as Chapter 2, the renunciation of war. On January 25, the Soviet Union's quest for the atomic bomb began, as Soviet physicist Igor Kurchatov was summoned to Moscow by Joseph Stalin. Kurchatov was ordered to spare no expense in getting nuclear weapons. At the time, only the United States had the bomb. The expulsion of Germans from Czechoslovakia began as hundreds of Sudetenland residents were loaded onto trains at Mariánske Lázně. Despite a public outcry, Sweden began the deportation of refugees from Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia back to the Soviet Union. The United Nations Security Council passed its first resolution, the creation of the Military Staff Committee. General Douglas MacArthur recommended in a telegram, to the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, that Japan's Emperor Hirohito not be put on trial for war crimes, noting that no specific and tangible evidence has been uncovered, and adding that his indictment will unquestionably cause a tremendous convulsion among the Japanese people, the repercussions of which cannot be overestimated. Hirohito continued to reign as Emperor of Japan until his death in 1989. Following the liberation of the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia, the Allied forces returned control of the colony to the Netherlands. On January 26, by a margin of 51 to 50, Ahmad Qavam S. Sultaneh was elected by the Majlis of Iran as the new prime minister. The vote was 51 for Qavam, 50 for Hossein Pirnia, and 1 for Ibrahim Hakimi, who had resigned a week earlier. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, acting under the authority of the War Labor Disputes Act and the direction of President Truman, seized 133 meatpacking plants affected by the nationwide walkout of 248,000 union members that had begun 10 days earlier. Bikini Atoll, part of the Marshall Islands, was selected as the test site for United States nuclear bombs because of its isolated location, its favorable winds, its deep harbor and small population. On January 27, the first multi-party elections, in almost 15 years, to take place in Germany were conducted in the American-occupied zone. The new Christian Democratic Union won more local offices than any other. On January 28, in Japan, the Civil Censorship Department was established by the American Occupation Authority to cut prohibited material from Japanese films before release. Censorship continued until June 1947. On January 29, a Norwegian politician, Trygve Lie, was appointed as the first Secretary-General of the United Nations by unanimous vote of the Security Council. On January 31, the Federative People's Republic of Yugoslavia was established with the promulgation of a new constitution that established a federation of 6 constituent republics and replaced the Kingdom of Yugoslavia with a presidential government. Hungary was proclaimed a republic under a provisional constitutional statute that formally abolished the monarchy. Eurico Gaspar Dutra took office as Brazil's first popularly elected president in 15 years. The Permanent Court of International Justice, created in 1920 as a part of the League of Nations, came to an end with the resignation of its judges. The new International Court of Justice was created on April 18. United Airlines Flight 14, flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet, route from Boise to Denver, crashed, killing all 21 persons on board.